Have the USB-C. I think they're helping you because. Housing. And that's when you get a not. Tires or something. About the size of the iPhone. Extras unit. So, I think that's a small enough.
Okay, if you want to grab your coffees or whatever you got, your snacks, we'll get going here. The second part, obviously, we're going to be talking about the attack on Iran and different things, but we're going to have a chance to hear from Keith. I was talking to him last night. He was giving me updates. Keith is on the ground there. We don't have any teams there, but Keith is there, and he's stuck. So he's going to be there for a while. He's going to zoom in, but again, we were planning on going to Israel, a group of us, connect with our IDF contacts and stuff like that, but that's all out. Israel, the airports are shut down, and they don't want nothing's open. They don't want any travel. They want people staying close to bomb shelters, so it wouldn't be a productive trip. So we're going to have to cancel that coming up in March. While they clear everything up. But we'll hear from him. He's going to tell us what's going on the ground, what the next moves are, and stuff like that. We had a good conversation yesterday, so I wanted him to share that with you tonight. So we'll do that the second hour when we start that, and then again talk about some of the rhetoric out there, the deception that's going on to make people think that attacking Iran wasn't a good idea. It was against American interest. It was, Israel pulling us by the nose into it, and it's just all nonsense. We'll unpack that later on. But let's do Hebraisms tonight. And so let's pray, and we'll get into it, okay? Father, we thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to get together, take some time out of our lives, and focus in on your word, focus in on what you're doing in the world. And we thank you for the fellowship of being with like-minded believers. It's really nice to be with people who think like us from a biblical perspective, so we thank you for that. So bless our time. Fill us with your Holy Spirit to illuminate us to your word. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, we're going to be finishing up Isaiah, moving into Jeremiah a little bit tonight. And the first thing that pops out when you're into the last chapter of Isaiah Isaiah kind of starts with rebellion of Israel, and then it ends with rebellion as far as punishing rebellion, and then the remnant being saved through all of that. But he'll mention where the worm does not die, and obviously Messiah used that phrase in the New Testament. Again, it's a Hebrew idiom, so it's important to understand what does that mean from that standpoint. So Isaiah 66:24 says, "And they shall go forth and look upon the corpses of the men who have transgressed against me, for their worm does not die, and their fire is not quenched. They shall be an abhorrence to all flesh." So what you're talking about is a complete irreversible judgment. It's a Hebraism for that. But it's speaking of Near Eastern imagery for this complete destruction, this irreversible judgment. And it has the image of maggots. That's the image. It uses the word worms, but they consider looking at maggots as worms. So they use that term worms. But they're maggots specifically. And maggots consuming a dead corpse is what it's trying to say. And so it's disgraced, it's decayed, it's total defeat, that type of stuff, as what it's trying to say. But then it says the worm doesn't die. And that adds a little layer to it that you have to kind of, okay, what is he referring to here as far as it doesn't die? Well, it's it's an ongoing judgment is the idea, and it's a perpetual shame and destruction. And so the image then that he's using is the image from the Gehenna Valley. And the idea then is when you would have the trash, it was a trash dump yard, basically the Gehenna Valley from Jerusalem. That's where everyone put their trash at. And you would burn it, but then a lot of the stuff wouldn't burn. And then that's where the maggots would come on. And so you had this perpetual fire, and then you had this perpetual maggot-eating stuff in this valley. And so it's a picture of destruction, but it's ongoing. The fires of Gehenna, of that valley, never went out because people were burning their trash, and then of course the flies were laying maggots in all the food and whatever was there. So that's what it's getting its imagery from. And you probably have heard that, but there was carcasses, animal carcasses out there, all kinds of junk and food, and it was nasty. And so that's where this concept of judgment, perpetual judgment, came from. And Jeremiah is picking up on that. So it's and again, it's worms, plural, so it's not a single maggot eating. It's the corpse is full of maggots is the idea, you know. And so when you look at a picture of Jerusalem, it has three valleys surrounding Jerusalem, and you have the Tyropian Valley over there, and you have the Himnon Valley, and then you have the Kidron Valley. And so the trash heap place where you would take your trash out is where the Himnon Valley is. And then again later on, Israel then starts sacrificing their children in this valley as well, and it gets more corrupt. But that's where the idea was. If you go there today, there's no remnant of any trash heap or anything like that. This is what it looks like today. There's olive trees and stuff down in there. It's a pretty deep crevice when you look down there from Jerusalem. So it doesn't reflect anything of what it looked like during that period of time in Jeremiah's day. Anyway, what's going on in the context, though? What's going on in the context is Isaiah 66 is describing Israel's final restoration, and the kingdom age is getting prepared for it. And what's happening is God is gathering this remnant to him that believe in him, the remnant of Israel, and that's contrasting with the rebels in Israel, and that could include the rebels, Gentiles as well. But there's been a big contrast in Isaiah between the remnant of Israel and the non-remnant of Israel. And so what you have here at the end of Isaiah is saying this is the fate of the rebels of Israel versus the remnant of Israel. And the remnant of Israel are seen worshiping God, obviously, and then the rebels are under the divine judgment of where the worm never dies. This abhorrence to all flesh means a perpetual warning to not only just the non-remnant of Israel that rebelled against him, but all humanity that rebels against God. So that's where the context is set, and then Jesus then uses the idiom in the New Testament, and again, he's quoting that, bringing that into understanding about Gehenna. So Jesus says this in Mark 9, 47 through 48, and if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. For it is better for you to enter the kingdom with one eye rather than having two eyes, to be cast into hellfire or Gehenna, where the worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. That's a direct imagery, from Isaiah, referring to eternal punishment, and that's what he was referring to. That's what Isaiah is referring to. So, what is Jesus saying here? Well, he's saying, look, anything that causes you to not come to faith in me, you need to cut it off. And so in the first sense, this has to do with salvation. And in that particular context, he's talking about Pharisaical Judaism. It's Pharisaical Judaism that is preventing most Jews from coming to faith in him. And that's what they have to cut off. They have to cut off Pharisaical Judaism or the Mishnah. They have to get rid of the man-made tradition in order to receive him. And that's what he has to do. Now, what we call that is we don't call that as a condition for salvation. We call that pre-evangelism. And that the conditions need to be right for people to be set in place in order to receive the Messiah. And many times that has to do with, like in that passage, cutting themselves off from Judaism or Mishnaic Judaism. Or in other cases, it could be the person's got to cut themselves off from the false religion they believe in, whether it's Jehovah's Witnesses, Catholicism, New Age, whatever it might be, Satanism, occultism. They have to cut themselves off from that, and that would be called pre-evangelism. The other thing you would have to cut off is other things. It could be addictions. It could be all kinds of other stuff as pre-evangelism stuff. Again, it's not a condition for salvation, but if it's becoming a stumbling block or something that's impeding them from seeing their need for Jesus, then that becomes the problem. It could be the very people hang out with. It's the crowds people hang out with sometimes becomes the impediment of accepting Messiah. So what Messiah is trying to say is, look, don't let anything impede you from seeing your need for me. And if you have it there, cut it off. If you're right, and he uses hyperbolic language of cutting your eye out and your different parts of you off. He doesn't mean literally. It means that anything that prevents you from coming to salvation. Because what's the alternative? It's better to cut those things off and not have them rather than be cast into hell where the worm doesn't die and the fire is not quenched. So it's not worth going to hell over this. This is why I can't understand like politicians, and I guess some of them are like beyond, beyond reach. I don't know. Because when you think about like some of the stuff I want to show you tonight, like, things from Gavin Newsom saying off-the-wall stuff, and you look at a guy like that and you're thinking, again, and not until someone dies are they without hope. They can always get saved at the very end. But, I mean, you want to think about, like, to Gavin, doesn't hell scare you? To Joe Biden, doesn't hell scare you? To Kamala Harris, doesn't hell scare you? Doesn't any of that scare you? And apparently it doesn't, because I think they don't think they're going there, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how they sleep at night, honestly. This is scary stuff. Why? And to them, it's like, you're not going to let go of the money. You're not going to let go of the power. You're not going to let go of the wealth. And because, like, you're going to all die at some point, and then what? Then you're nobody at that point, and then the worms are going to eat you, and the fire's not quenched. So that's what you want? I mean, it's ridiculous. I honestly think they don't think they're going to go there. They think they're really nice guys and stuff like that because there's no fear of God in them, obviously. But so you look at a politician like that, and you're like, oh my gosh, doesn't it make them afraid? But you just ask the average person that doesn't believe in God or doesn't believe in Jesus or whatever. They think they're a good person. They think they're going to go to heaven. And they have no need for Jesus because they think they're good enough. Well, that's what keeps them from being afraid of hell. They don't have a good self-evaluation of themselves. They think they're going to get in, and they're going to get on their good works. And so there's no need for them to change. There's no need for them to see the need for Christ because there's no fear of hell in them. So that's the thing that he's trying to say about salvation. Whatever impedes it, get rid of it. If it's your family, if it's money, whatever it needs to be. Okay, what is this concept then about the worm not dying? Well, it's obviously a reference to the idiom of what was going on in the Gehenna Valley, where the worm, the maggots, are eating the individual, and then the concept of the fire never going out in Gehenna. So if you use that and then you apply that to hell, then when you're looking at the doctrine of hell, the metaphor itself is speaking of perpetual punishment. Okay? And so this whole annihilation thing that, God just annihilates people that go to hell and they don't stay in there very long because he just wipes them out. That's not even what the Jewish idiom is referring to. If you're referring to the Gehenna fire and the maggots, that was just perpetually going on. That was the dump. And it never stopped. It just kept going on. And so even the idiom is referring to everlasting punishment, everlasting hell. You can't get past the idiom. So Kirk Cameron and anyone that believes in annihilation is dead wrong. Everything supports that people's existence in hell is perpetual. Now, to add to that, it's not a playground either, being in hell, because this concept of the worm not dying and the fire is not quenched. Notice what Jesus uses the term for. What's the word before worm? There. So there's a twist to it all of a sudden, that he's added something to it. Now he's given you more of a theological insight about their body is what he's referring to. Their worm, which refers to the body. So what is it doesn't die. Well, okay. And so the body that they receive, they will be resurrected. The damned will be resurrected at the great white throne judgment. Like it says in the Old Testament, some will be resurrected to everlasting life, and some will be resurrected to everlasting condemnation. And so that was clearly set in the Old Testament, especially in Daniel chapter 12. Okay, and Isaiah 26. So they do get a resurrected body, but it's not glorified like the body we get as believers. They get their body, but it's not glorified, but that body is it doesn't allow to be, it's not perishable. It continues to exist, but it's in a corrupted state. And I don't know how further to go into this and how much detail, but the body they have is a weakened body. It is a physical body. It's not glorified, and therefore that body allows them to feel the pain of the fire. Because there is fire. It's the lake of fire, and the fire is not quenched. And that means it never gets put out. It's always burning, perpetually burning. And so is their body. Their body is perpetually burning and corrupting. And how does that work? I have no idea. We're talking, it's a physical thing. It's not just simply metaphysical. It's a physical thing, and it goes on and on without relief. And you all know, if you've ever been burnt with fire, how that feels. Okay? So just imagine having that feeling forever and ever and ever, and that's what it feels like to be without the presence of God in the lake of fire. This is why when you start digging into the doctrine of hell and eternal torment, why people start getting really uncomfortable really quick with it. Because the implications are so awful that people can hardly imagine that kind of existence never stopping and continuing on forever and ever and ever. And that's where the cults come in, and they doctor it up, and they lighten it up, and they try to change the doctrine of hell. And you simply can't do that. You can't get away with that. Why is hell so bad then? Why is there this eternal torment? Well, the torment is, first of all, coming from the condition that they have chosen to be in, and this is the condition of existence without God. Okay, so that's first and foremost. The existence is torment to be without God. What's happening right now is unbelievers and believers alike right now are enjoying God's common grace. And they don't even realize it. You know, they move, they operate, and they have freedom, they think, and they're doing their lives. But the minute they step into the next life, all that is all that reality that they thought they had is gone. They're not in control anymore. God's in control, and that's where they're going to be, and there's no way of getting out of it. There's no second chances about it. And so it makes people hesitant to even to believe in the doctrine of hell. They don't want to believe it when they have to drill down into it. Let me tell you this. The doctrine of hell is worse than you can imagine. But the same is true. Heaven is more than you can imagine too. And so, okay, so you have this whole torment of not being with God, and people don't know what that feels like. But then at the same time, there's a judicial element in hell. So you have the lack of God's presence, his lack of his love, lack of his grace, lack of his mercy. It's not there. But what you do get is judgment or wrath in hell. And the wrath is the concept of where the fire is at. That's what fire is associated to. It's associated to wrath. It is real fire, but it is real wrath. And so associated to God is fire. His Shekinah is sometimes seen as fire, a pillar of fire at night. And that is him extending his wrath on the people in a judicial system. Judicial, I don't know what I want to say. It's a forever judicial penalty, I should say. It never stops. And then people will say, well, then I don't understand why the penalty is forever when the person maybe lived 60, 70, 80 years. Well, it's this. It's the punishment has to fit the crime. A crime against another human being requires a death, a life sentence, death penalty, life for life. But here's the problem. When someone sins against an eternal being, it requires an eternal penalty. And that's why it's never ending. That's why the person can never pay it off. That's why annihilationism doesn't satisfy God's justice. It does injustice to God by saying people can be annihilated and not exist, because that means they didn't pay their payment. They have to pay their payment against sinning against an eternal being, and therefore it's an eternity in hell penalty. Okay. The opposite is then true as well. So God made a way through his Son to have your sins eternally forgiven. Because the Son is God and man, and because he's God, his death pays the eternal penalty. His sacrifice pays the eternal penalty. That's why it's so significant that God required the Messiah to be the God-man. That's the only thing that could satisfy an eternal debt against God, which is an eternal payment to that, which we call propitiation. So I know that's a lot of theology and stuff, but that we have to understand the doctrine of hell is based on God's justice and, let me add into it, love. Why? Why would I even say that? Because when you study the doctrine of hell, the concept of God's love will pop up. Because God has actually given these people exactly what they want. They do not want to be with him. So that's one part of it. So you have the judicial part, but then you have the actual, he is honoring their free will by giving them what they want. They do not want to be in him. Hell, for a person in hell, would be in the presence of God. That would be hell for them, because they don't want to be around him. To drag a demon or a fallen angel into the presence of God is absolute torment to them, because they don't want to be around him. They absolutely try to get away as much as they can. They don't want to be around God. And so it's torment to them. So he's giving them, he's honoring their free will and loving them so much that he lets them go, that he gives them exactly what they want. A place of quarantine that doesn't affect anyone else, a place of quarantine that here's what you wanted to be away from me, here's what you get. But on top of that, you got the judicial aspect, and then you got the fire, and the worm never dies, the body, and all that other stuff mixed into this. So, believe it or not, hell is an expression of God's love. And if you want to get a little bit more deeper philosophically on that, then read C.S. Lewis, because like C.S. Lewis will say, when you read about this, he'll say, look, because of him giving free will to human beings, hell is locked on the inside. They're the ones who put themselves there. They're the ones who took that option, and that's what they wanted. So this is all called free will. And that's why the penalty has to be so severe, because of that. Other observations. It's their worm, like I talked about, that it's their corruption. So they're given this body, and this body is in a corrupt state. I don't know what the meaning of that means, but it's not glorification, but it's a body under judgment. But it goes on forever. Again, fire not quenched. We covered that, and it's shame and punishment. not annihilationism. Okay, so going back to Isaiah, what's he trying to do? He's doing a contrast between those who choose to worship God and those who don't, and they're the image of what happens to them by rejecting God's rule. And like I said, the book Isaiah begins with Israel's rebellion, and it ends with the fate of rebellion, which is hell. So it's a prophetic warning about future judgment and hell. And that's why Jesus picks up on that. And Jesus is capitalizing on that when he's talking to Israel. Now, let's go from there, and then let's jump into Jeremiah. So we finish Isaiah. We go into Jeremiah now. So the first thing out of the box in Jeremiah is chapter 2, is he talks about broken cisterns. And again, you have to know the background of cisterns and living water to understand what is he referring to. Well, in Jeremiah 2:13, he says, "For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living water." Again, Jesus will use this term, fountain of living waters, for himself. "And hewn themselves cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water." And you're like, what is that? What is that referring to? Well, again, it's all metaphoric language. It's all Jewish idioms. Okay. So the idiom then has to do with trusting in the wrong resources. They're trusting in unreliable resources rather than God. That's the idea. Okay, so in the Near East, or the Middle East, you're in always a desert climate most of the time, and water is very rare, very scarce. And so water becomes like the crown jewel. Water is always looked at as that's like gold, is to have water, especially in a desert climate, and where it doesn't rain very much. And you and I being in Bakersfield, it's very much like this. It doesn't rain very much, right? You know, we get that, and we get how important water is. For them, it's very vital. They will die if they don't get this water, especially in that day and time. Now Israel's, they have to. Israel even today has to do. What's the thing where they take the water out of the ocean? Desalination. Yeah, they have to do that. It's so hard to come by. They share the Jordan River with Jordan, and man, water is very difficult. That's why they invented the drip system to water their farms, and then we borrowed it in California. Instead of doing flood irrigation, we started copying what the Jewish people did with their drip system. And they've had a drip system ancient times. They used to do it in clay pots, and they would have a clay pot next to a vine, and they would just go up and down the rows and fill that little clay pot up with water, and they would drip down on the vine. So they were doing drip systems long time before anyone else. Okay, so anyway, the idea then is, in Israel, you'll have two sources of water then. You have living water that comes from a spring or from Mount Hermon, and it's going down into Jordan, and that's living water, and that's what you consider that as living water. It's moving, and it's coming from a spring or a mountain cap or something like that. And then you have rainwater that you catch, and then you catch it in a cistern, and that's a lot of times how you drink your water is from a cistern. The problem is, when you created a cistern, you obviously dug down into the ground, and you created this big well type of thing, and you put all the funnels of the rainwater to it. And then you would plaster it on the inside. So if you go to Israel today, you'll see some cisterns that have the remains of the plaster on there, especially Masada. You'll see the cisterns there, and they have plaster on the very bottoms of it still. But then you'll see the rocks that the plaster has fallen off of. So the key about a cistern is this. Once it got old, the plaster started falling off. And then what happened then is the water then starts leaking through the rocks, and your cistern becomes useless. It becomes broke, but you can't use it anymore. And that's what would happen to your cistern. It's called a broken cistern. Okay, so that's the idea of that. Okay, so when Jeremiah uses it, what is he trying to say? He is basically saying, look, broken cisterns are false solutions in life. So we come up with solutions in our life and decisions. I think this is gonna be the right idea that gets my life squared up, and this is gonna be good for me. And the problem is we're creating cisterns that break and don't hold water. And then eventually, they hold water for a little bit, and we think, okay, this is satisfying. Yeah, it's going good, holding all right. And then within weeks or years or whatever, the human solution breaks down and doesn't deliver what it's supposed to do, and it fails. And the contrast is that versus getting living water from God, doing it His way, doing it the way He tells you to do it, instead of you inventing your own way to capture water and give you life. And basically, the idea of water in the Middle East is life. That's it. So people have their own concept of what they think they're going to build their life around. And this is what's going to satisfy me. This is what's going to sustain me. So it could be anything. It could be wealth. It could be a job. It could be a career. It could be a relationship. It could be, I don't know, an addiction. It could be anything. Anything you think that's going to give you life other than God. And people start building their lives around that. And for a time, it works. So if you built a cistern, it would work for a while, but eventually the plaster is going to come off. And it's going to leak, and it's not going to hold the water. And that's what he's trying to say. So basically then, what we're talking about is man-made reservoirs cut into rock, but it's a picture of us figuring out our own lives without God and His resources. And so in the background of Jeremiah, what they were relying on, the false cisterns, was idols, false gods. And that's what eventually going to get them kicked out of the land. And that's what Jeremiah is hammering on them about. You have turned to other gods to satisfy your desires, your sexual desires, your agriculture desires. I mean, your economy was wrapped up into worshiping Baal, worshiping Asherah, all that junk. And why? Because they wanted a good economy. So I want you to think about this. When Israel started making their own cisterns, so to speak, or idols, what were they willing to sacrifice to these idols? Well, if you're worshiping Moloch, if you're worshiping Baal, you have to make a sacrifice to them. Do you know what the sacrifices were? Their children. That's what starts happening. That's why they get kicked out of the land. I mean, they start humans sacrificing their children, like Aztecs, Mayans, like any other pagan out there. They go off the rails. And that's their cisterns. They think that these gods are going to hold life for them, hold water for them by sacrificing to these gods. And they're doing it with their children. For what? I mean, you think, well, I'm going to sacrifice to Moloch or because I want good crops. And I want a good economy. And I want my crops to come in. And then, I want a large family. So, well, you must, if you're going to want a large family, so you can have workers for your farm, and you want a good, crop coming in at this harvest time, you better sacrifice one of your babies. And that's what they did. And it got really bad. It got really bad. And you think, well, I can't believe they would resort to that. I can. People do it for convenience now. They're not even doing it for their crops. There is no good reason. They're just saying, I'm just going to kill my baby because it's inconvenient to me. Or it's a financial burden to me, or whatever it is. I mean, people do it now. We're sacrificing babies to Moloch today. But, okay, so what's the point, though? Not everybody in the room is doing that, obviously, and so that seems like a disconnect. We know the culture's doing that. But what is the reality for us? It is anything we are trusting in other than God to give us life. And the thing about that could be a front. That could be an escape. We're using stuff to escape from the reality of the harshness of life. I get it. Life is hard, isn't it? Life sucks, doesn't it? And what are you supposed to do? Well, a lot of people make sacrifices to other gods because they want a way out. They want a temporary escape. They want something to get them out of this reality, at least temporarily. And they make that sacrifice to that god. So they may not be sacrificing a baby. They'll sacrifice themselves. They'll destroy themselves in the process of it, just to get a little temporary escape or whatever it is. Or they go to relationships. They think that's going to satisfy my problem. I got to be in a relationship. That's going to be. I remember talking to a lady a long time ago that used to go to our church, and she's gone now. I think she passed away. And she had 2 husbands prior die. And it really took its toll on her, obviously. And I was counseling with her and everything through that, and it was tough, no doubt about that. Losing 2 husbands like that. And the last one was, I don't know, it had to be like, 15, 17 years or something like that. It's quite a long time. And he finally passed away. And in my counseling to her, she was still grieving and everything, but immediately she said, I can't be alone. I have to have a man with me. And I said, why? I mean, you just came off of the death of a husband, and you're in the grieving process. This is not, we're talking like a few months. This is not the time to start another relationship. Well, I just can't be alone. So her fear of being alone was driving her. Was driving her to, start dating immediately. Like within months. And I don't recommend that because typically in counseling it requires about a good 2 years of grieving properly before you even start a relationship. Typically. It could be longer than that. I don't know. Sometimes, but that's typical. The answer that modern counseling will give is about 2 years of grieving. So when you see somebody like lose a loved one and then they immediately jump into another relationship, I know exactly what they're doing, and you know exactly what they're doing too. They're trying to not deal with the pain of being alone, and I get it, it's painful, but starting another relationship immediately after that, that's the wrong move right there. And so her idol was aloneness. She didn't want to be alone. And I tried to help her work through that, but I was no success whatsoever. But she wanted what she wanted. And so who's that going to hurt, Brandon? It's not going to hurt you and I. It's going to hurt herself. That's who it's going to hurt. Because when in that situation, when you're grieving and you don't go through the 5 stages of grief like you should, you're gonna have to go through the anger. You're gonna have to go through the depression and the bargaining and all the stages until you get to acceptance. And if you don't get to the acceptance, you bury the pain of the loss, and you think it's gone because you have a new relationship, and that's a distraction to the pain. But what will happen is it'll start a root inside of you, and it'll come out in other ways and start busting out branches of grief in the person's life. Okay. Is that bad? I don't know. You tell me. Here's one of the branches that people have when they bury grief. They become addicted to things. Food is number 1 addiction, then drugs and alcohol and all that stuff. They become addicted, and they don't know why. They don't know why they have an eating addiction. And it's because they've buried the pain so deep inside, they've got to have an outlet, and they don't know where the pain's coming from, but it's there, and food becomes a dopamine rush. Drugs become a dopamine rush. The alcohol becomes a dopamine rush. Okay, that's just one thing, okay? And then the other thing is they lose the ability to empathize and sympathize with other people. What do you mean? Well, when you ignore your own pain and you bury it, and you don't grieve the process of it, it stays there, and you have to detach in your soul from the pain. Now, everybody knows how to detach. There's times in life that you actually have the gift of detachment, that there's times where you're like, hey, I can't like start grieving right now. I got to maintain my sanity right now, and I got to hold the fort down. There's times when you have to do that. And you have the mechanism inside of you to detach from your emotions and just do what you need to do to get the thing done, and then you'll grieve later. God has built us like that. The problem is you will use that on yourself of detaching from your emotions, and you will constantly stay detached from your emotions because you don't want to feel the pain. You say, what's that going to do? That will screw up every relationship you have. You know why? I keep popping or some things doing something. The reason is your inability to feel your own pain causes you not to have any ability whatsoever to feel someone else's pain. You can't sympathize, nor can you empathize with other people, because if you do, it brings your grief back out. And so you know what happens to the person? The person just shuts down emotionally, and people say, you know what? I don't know what's wrong with Brandon, but I just can't connect to him. And they'll just say, I just can't connect to that person, A, B, and C, or whoever it is. And they can't figure it out why. And I'm like, yeah, that person won't let me in, and they won't let themselves be vulnerable, and they won't let me see any weakness or anything like that. And so they're real guarded, and they guard their emotions, and you can't connect. So look, if you want good relationships, you have to be unguarded to the right people, and you have to be able to empathize and sympathize with the next person, and that builds the relationship. That's how you have good relationship. But if you're always guarded and you won't let anyone in, no one wants to be around you. And so what ends up happening to that person is they start isolating themselves because of how they're coming across to other people, and they don't even realize it. And we call them detached. That person's detached from their emotions. You know, sometimes you'll see people that have a mental issue of like flat affect, where it's like they have no emotion. You ever seen a person like that? It's just like there's no emotion whatsoever, nothing in their face. You can't know if are they sad, happy. It's just they're flat affect. And there's people like that. They come to church too, by the way. They don't stay very long because it's like, are you happy, sad? What's wrong with you, man? Have you seen that? I see it all the time. I see it on Sundays. What's wrong with you? My gosh. I know you see them on Sunday because I do. I know you do. So anyway, sometimes they have flat affect. But these people don't have flat affect. They just are hiding their pain, and they don't let it out. So here, those are just a couple of scenarios. And I can go on and on and on about what can happen when you don't grieve properly. And like I said, this lady doesn't come to our church. But she started dating immediately, and it was just a wrong move, man. And she found, all these guys want to have sex with me. Yeah, I know. That's how it is out there. And she was in her 70s. So in counseling, you say, I've seen it all, but you haven't seen it all. You just got to just wait for the next one coming through. And it's like, okay, that's new. So, but, she was self-sabotaging her relationships all the time, and she was shut down. She couldn't do it. And so, that's what we're talking about, and that's just one thing. And so it could be anything. It's like, well, if my thing is I find life through money, okay, there's going to come a point in time where you're not going to have any money. Just wait till you're older, and the skilled nursing sucks you dry like a vampire, and you have no money left after being in skilled nursing for a half a year. I'm just telling you. It'll suck you dry like a vampire. That's all the medical industry is a vampire sticking their fangs in your neck and sucking you dry. Because you think, oh, well, I was going to prepare for this golden retirement, and I'm just going to go see the world. No, you're in skilled nursing. Sorry. And it's like, you put your stock in the wrong thing. And I'm not trying to be mean, but that's what people do. They put their faith in the wrong thing. And how many people have you heard say, man, I just can't wait to retire, and when I hit the retirement, and it's going to be great, I'm going to golf every day, and I'm going to do this. And I had some bozo one time tell me, he goes, I'm going to retire, and he was fairly young in his retirement. I think, he was a correctional officer guy. And so he got to retire pretty early. He worked 25 years, and he was going to retire early. And I said, well, what are you going to do with all this time? And he goes, I'm going to go on the senior PGA. And I said, you're going to play on the seniors tour on the PGA? I mean, what kind of golfer are you? Oh, I'm good. I'm scratch at River Lakes and stuff. And I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Let's stop right now. Let's talk about the golf thing real quick. The guys on the senior PGA are former PGA guys, not correctional officers. What the guy was thinking, it's like in La La Land, man. And so, okay, all right, man, whatever. Delusions of grandeur, go for it, man. You're going to practice and get on the senior PGA tour, which is, you're going to play Freddie Couples. Okay, sure. Knock yourself out. But my point about that is he put all the stock in retirement and having this free time to play golf and do all these other things. Guess what? He ended up having a heart attack. That's it. Done. It's over. Game over. Done. And dude, I have seen countless stories like that because, and I'm not saying, hey, we don't look for retirement or stuff like that, but he had put his stock into retirement and, thought he was going to have this second life and basically live for himself and, that kind of thing. Is free from the job and everything. And I get that. But he died. And that's what Jeremiah is trying to tell Israel. You're making cisterns and expecting life from these cisterns, whatever the issue could be, and you're not going to get it. You're only going to get life from God, who gives living water, not cistern water. That's what he's trying to say. So there's a twofold aspect to this. So it's not just happening to unbelievers, it happens to Christians a lot. So what Jeremiah is trying to say is, here's the pattern that happens. God is offering the living water to anyone who thirsts. And that living water is more than salvation. It's life, okay? The abundant life. This is the way to live. This is what you live for. This is what you gear your life towards, what God's agenda is, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen in your life. Okay, but what happened to Israel is they had committed two sins. The first sin is they rejected the offer of the fountain of living waters. Now that becomes a question of why. Don't you want that kind of life? Doesn't that sound good? God is directing my life. I'm going to do his will, and he's going to, and who knows what he asks us to do, but I would think that's better. So, and then they went to the cisterns. That's the second evil, is they went to the cisterns, the idols, okay? Here's my question. What was not appealing that God had offered through the living waters that the idol was offering through the sacrificing of children? It doesn't seem like a good bargain, does it? Or maybe it is. I don't know. Why did they reject God's offer and go to idols? The idol said, if you go to me, I'll give you what you want, but then I require your child. What's the problem over here of going God's way? See, idolatry, as you know, Paul will say that behind an idol is a demon or a fallen angel. Okay? These are real creatures. And you don't misunderstand that when they made a little statue, that the person was stupid enough to believe the statue had any power. They believed the statue is where the entity would dwell when they called it down from heaven to dwell in the idol. They didn't believe the idol was a god. They believed the god was in the stars. But the god would come down and inhabit the idol. So that's what they believed about idolatry. They believed it was a real creature, a real being, a god. So Paul says that these creatures that they were worshiping are demons and fallen angels. Okay. So what's appealing here versus going God's way? Because you know what the demon or the fallen angel will do in the bargain that you make with them in idolatry? And this is why idolatry is very attractive. Very attractive. It does give you what you want. They'll make the deal with you. They will give you what you want. You want good crops? That's fine. Sacrifice your baby and blood to me. I'll give you good crops. See, that's the game of why people went into idolatry. That was why it was so attractive, because I did get what I wanted to some degree. I did get a reaction. The problem is, if I go to God and he's saying, I've given you living waters, there's some caveats here. I don't get to ask for whatever I want, because sometimes the stuff I'm asking for is going to kill me, or it's not holy, it's sinful, it's wrong, it's coming from an illicit desire, it's evil, or whatever it is. Oh, okay, well, there's the answer. So the problem of why people didn't go to God for his living water, which seems very attractive, is God is not your cosmic butler. God is not Santa Claus. And he is not going to sit there and say, you want this, you want that, you want that. Okay, no problem, I'm giving it to you. Just worship me. He's not playing that game. He's not playing that game at all. He's saying, I offer you living water, and it's my way or the highway. That's why people don't go to the living water. Because they want to curtail God in their own image. And he doesn't play that game. That's why they go to idolatry, and that's why it was so appealing, because they could make a deal. And that God would give them something back. And that's what kept everyone in the game. And then they got entrapped into the system of idolatry. And behind idolatry was an economic system of the pagan world. Their whole economic system ran on idolatry. Whether their crops were good, whether they got rain, whether they got whatever they needed to have, and it was all dependent on if you sacrificed to the gods. Now, here's what happens. The way sacrifice works in the ancient world, and the way it works today in Satanism and witchcraft, is that the more sin and sacrifice you can make to the god, the more iniquity you pile up. Okay? So follow me on this. The more iniquity you pile up is like putting money into a bank. And so in Satanism and witchcraft, they will pile up iniquity by doing evil. So they do human sacrifice, they sacrifice babies, kids, in Satanism and stuff, as an example of a modern day pagan thing. And what they do is the more iniquity they pile up, the more iniquity, the more iniquity, the more iniquity, the more the demon or the fallen angel will do stuff for them, if that makes sense. So they have to have a certain level of iniquity as a bank account, so to speak, and then they can cash in on that. So if they really want something really bad, really, really bad, they will do really, really bad things to get that reaction from the entity. And that's how the game is played. And so when you see it today, modern day Satanism or witchcraft, that's the same thing that would happen with if you're worshiping Asherah, Baal, Moloch, any of those. They required you building up iniquity. And the other way you built up iniquity is through sexual sin. And that's why a lot of the temples had temple prostitution, male and female, and you could build up iniquity through that as well. And that's how you worship the gods many times too. So That's why idolatry and sexual immorality are like go hand in hand many times. They go right hand in hand. Why did they require blood sacrifice but babies? Why did they require that? Well, in the pagan world, in the satanic world, the purer the blood, the younger the blood is, the more power it has for the gods. And that's why they would do child sacrifice. That's why today they do child sacrifice. That's why they do kidnappings and do child sacrifices. Is they believe that the younger the blood is, the more power it has in it. It's wild, no doubt about that. And so that's what Israel chose. They wanted what they wanted. Not all of Israel, but the majority of them wanted what they wanted, and they were willing to pile up as much iniquity as they could to get the God to do something for what they wanted. Now that's bad. Okay. But it still happens today. You see people selling out our country. Right? You know what I'm talking about. They sell out our flat out country to China, to Islam, or whatever. For what? So they can have $1 million, and then you find out how much money they got, and it was like, that was worth it? $1 million to sell out your country? That was worth it? That's all you got paid? I thought it was going to be like $1 billion. No, it's just, you'll be shocked when you find out how much people sold the country out. It was peanuts for selling out the country. But they do it all the time, and they pile up iniquity, right? Because what do they want? Power, money, wealth, whatever it is. Women, men, whatever. It's stupid. Absolutely stupid. Okay. I've done, exhausted that. Let's see what I got. Okay, so here's the thing. And we'll end on this with Jesus. So Jesus brings this idiom to him in the Gospels. And so look what he says. Whoever drinks of the water that I shall give shall never thirst. Woman at the well, remember that. John 7, he's at, I think, tabernacles at this one, or Sukkot. And this is the ceremony where they're pouring the water out. Okay, so the water is going all over the temple, and they're pouring the water out at Sukkot. And he goes, and he stands up there in the midst of all of them, and they would get the water from the pool of Siloam, take it all the way up to the temple, and then pour it out. He goes, and then, so while they're pouring it out, guess what he does? He takes the idiom from Jeremiah and says, if anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. He who believes in me out of his heart will flow rivers of living water. That's Jeremiah. Every Jewish person would have known exactly what he's quoting. He's quoting Jeremiah, and he's quoting a passage that had to deal with Israel rejecting the living water. And what's happening right in front of him? Israel, again, is rejecting the living water. Same pattern as Jeremiah's day, right? And this time it's worse because the one that actually gives the living water is right there in their midst, right? So he ends up being the fountain of living water that Jeremiah was speaking about. So now you can tie Jesus, the idiom, to Jeremiah, and now you have your connection. So that's how that works. All right. Anyway, we did some application already on that. Don't go after cracked cisterns. They don't give you life. All right, any questions, right? Any questions before we wrap things up? All good? Okay, 5 minutes. We're going to come back, talk to Keith. We'll talk about Israel and Iran and the United States.
All right. I can see you. Uh, okay. Yeah, you need to do a sound check or anything on my end? Okay. Well, I'm on the phone. You want me to hang up on the phone? Okay. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Are we good? Perfect. What do we got? Like 2, 3 minutes? All right. We're going to hang up on the phone. Okay. How's the lighting look? Not, all right. Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Ty. Hey, I'm actually using that lighting system we brought over. Okay. All right.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. All right.
Okay. Perfect. Hey, Alfonso, you need me to hang up on the phone? It sounds like everybody can hear our conversation too. Okay. Hey, Alfonso. Yes. Hey, okay. Hey, I got some text messages that people online were able to hear the conversation. Um, so but they've been listening. Yeah. Ours.
All right. Hey, let's get going here. Alfonso has got us set up, and we're going to be hearing from Keith on the ground. I think it's 7 o'clock here. So it's a little after 7. 4 a.m. Is it 4 a.m.? Keith, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear it. Actually, it's actually a little after 5, I
It's a
think.
little after 5. Okay, I appreciate you
Yeah.
getting up early. There's Keith. There he is. All right, man.
It's good to see you.
Good to have you. Everybody's clapping for you, Keith. I'm glad you're safe. And so, anyway, you and I were talking last night, and what I would like you to do, Keith, is kind of give everyone a briefing here tonight. What's on the ground? What's happening? What are you seeing? Where is this going, man? So let's just tater chip, let her roll, man.
You got it, brother. So let me give some context where we're located. So our northern campus is in Yeshua, which is Upper Galilee. So we're approximately 18 miles from the border of Lebanon and 13 miles from the border of Syria. And like you and I were talking, I'm primarily focused on what's happening on the ground in our area because we're on basically the front line of the fight with Hezbollah. So 3 nights ago, Hezbollah broke the ceasefire agreement from 2024. That opened the door for Israel to respond. And they're responding with quite a bit of force. So they activated 100,000 reservists. The last 3 or 4 days, there's been mass transportation of armored personnel carriers, tanks. I saw a semi load of Iron Dome rockets being transported up. And they've also went back to the original confrontation line that they established after October 7th. So everybody remembers that they did mass evacuations up here in the north. So the Yeshua was the last, I guess, the last area that wasn't evacuated. So everything north of where we're currently at was evacuated. So the IDF is they've started establishing checkpoints and roadblocks. All the kibbutzim and moshavs and villages up here that have security teams and gates had started, locking down their areas. And there's just a show of force. And then something that I really appreciate is we have continual air coverage. It gets a little annoying at night with an F-16 buzzing around all night.
Oh, really?
But it's nice to know that they're there. So we have a F-16 in a holding pattern, basically flying in circles, and we have an Apache helicopter. And their primary mission is to intercept drones coming from Lebanon.
Okay.
So that's kind of the status of where we're at. And I can tell you, I was talking to Lana before we got on. She was asking about, what's going on. Missiles coming from Iran really aren't a concern for us. We're not the target. So any missile alerts that we get, primarily they're heading towards the coast, towards Haifa. And if you know, the Gerald Ford is basically right off the coast of Haifa.
Right.
So we do get quite a bit of missile alarms. But the only concern with the missiles is if they're intercepted above us, then we'll get an alarm for the shrapnel.
Okay. So tell me this: what's the morale like with the Israelis that you're around? What are they saying? How are they feeling? What's their take on things?
It's mixed. There's a sense of relief that the U.S. finally got into the fight, because there was a sense of frustration after June that the U.S. didn't allow Israel to finish the job. So they know that once you attack Hezbollah or Iran and you stop, they immediately go into a retooling, rebuilding, rearmament activity. So there's a sense of frustration that, hey, we didn't finish the job. And as soon as we started attacking, you could just feel this like national sigh of relief and gratitude that the U.S. was enabling Israel to take care of business, and two, come in with a show of force.
Yeah.
So on that end, morale's high, but I can tell you on the other end, I can see why there's so much PTSD here. The sense, on the ground here, it has that COVID vibe. Everything's shut down. Kids aren't going to school unless you have an essential job. You're working at a gas station, grocery store, some type of infrastructure for the military. Everybody's on lockdown, essentially. They send out an alert saying, hey, stay close to shelter. You don't see a lot of people out and about. So it's really... people are somewhat isolated. It's different here because it's very communal. Neighbors are getting together. I've spent quite a bit of time over our neighbors. They just spend time together. But it's I can tell you, whoever designed this rocket alert to notify you that somebody they launched missiles at you, it's unnerving. It's like, I got anxiety every time I hear that thing. It's just like, okay, now what?
I bet. So, have you been able to talk to anybody like Elia or anyone in our IDF troops units and whatever? Have they told you anything about?
I haven't. I touched base with Elia briefly, but I have been in contact. So just so people know, like the structure, how things are structured here with the military and how we support it, is you have the regular IDF, and they're the first line of defense. Right now, they're in Lebanon. They're in Syria. In Syria, they're about 40 kilometers in to create a buffer zone to protect the Druze up there. In Lebanon, they're basically, probably by now, they're crossing over the Litani, looking for ammo depots, weapon caches, and things like that. That's a regular IDF. And then on the border is where the reservists are stationed. So about 100,000 reservists were activated. And then between the border and the villages of the kibbutzim, you have these new IDF units, or first responder units. When we actually have been supporting there's two up here in the area. There's one up in Galilee, and there's one in Galilee, Upper Galilee, and there's one up in Golan. So the one in Golan we've been working with for about 6 months. It's a new unit that the IDF stood up, and it's really in response to October 7th. And we all know that the kibbutzim and the moshavs that had basically armed citizens there and people that could respond either suffered zero casualties or minimal casualties. The areas that were unguarded and had basically nobody with a rifle suffered mass casualties. So we're supporting the first responders. I spent some time up on Golan 2 days ago with them. They had just been activated for about 3 days. And we actually had to peel off. We were spending time with them, and they got the notice that there was a terrorist infiltration. They're primarily concerned with terrorists infiltrating from Syria. So we all know that during the Assad regime, that Assad was pro-Iran. He funneled arms and resources through Syria into Lebanon to support Hezbollah. So the concern now is those militias that are pro-Iranian that are still in Iraq would infiltrate through Syria and then into the, I guess, the eastern border. So they actually had to respond to a potential terrorist infiltration. So we had to peel off. So it's very dynamic here, and I can tell you, typically like when we get the rocket alarm coming from Iran, you get the annoying noise, and then about 3 or 4 minutes later, you actually get some notice what area of the country it's going to potentially hit. And then if you're in the affected area of shrapnel, you get an alarm. With the attacks from Hezbollah right now, we're not really getting any warning. Typically, I get woken up with a loud explosion intercepting a drone or a rocket, and then the alarm goes off. So for here, I spent a lot of time. I can almost predict what's going to happen. Our air cover that we have, he flies at a fairly high altitude, but when you hear him, coming down to a lower altitude, he's typically on an intercept run for a drone. Okay. And then you get the explosion, and then the event's over. And sometimes you'll get an alarm post engagement from the shrapnel, but a lot of times, we're just going about our business here, and all of a sudden there's an explosion. So it gets a little unnerving.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, Keith, how do they deal with that? Because I think I would get PTSD hearing all these alarms and explosions going on. I mean, do they just go about their daily lives? I mean, what do they do? How do they respond to this?
That's the amazing part. Like I said, like you and I were talking, I don't know how most Americans would deal with this. It's part of their daily life here. I mean, the alarm goes off. You go to the shelter. Once the alarm gives the all clear, it's usually about a 15-minute process. And we have the luxury of having a bomb shelter here at our campus. I really feel for people that live in apartment complexes, older buildings where you have to go to like a communal bomb shelter, because people bring their animals. They bring, hopefully they're wearing some form of clothing, depending on what time it is in the middle of the night. So it's amazing how resilient the Israeli people are. I mean, this is what they've been dealing with for the past, actually, pretty much forever.
Yeah.
Their enemies have always wanted to attack and murder them. So they've always dealt with that type of hostility. But at the same time, they have great hope. Yeah. I mean, there's the people that just want to live in peace. They want to get about living their life. And you can really see it with the young people. Our neighbors, it's school break here. They're getting ready to go on a vacation. It got canceled. The kids are in the house. They're going stir crazy. And it's just, and again, they just went through this back in June.
Yeah.
So it's tough. And like I say, it's a big encouragement, for them to see the support that they're getting from the U.S. and from ministries such as Rock Harbor. Yeah. They appreciate our presence. This is a ministry of presence. It's a ministry of meeting the needs of the Jewish people, really at one of their greatest points in history where they need support. It's amazing, watching Western media with the Jewish family, and you hear, and they see and hear the anti-Semitism. I can tell you, most Israelis here are not a big fan of Tucker Carlson.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah, it's just like, hey, we get it, man. We're on your side. Yeah. But I would say that they're resilient. They're tough. They're built different.
Oh, yeah, it seems like they're very resilient. So here's, I guess, my question too. Then, we've established ourselves over there in Israel. You're there for a long time, and we're having our teams go. We had to cancel a few teams, but it looks like to me, with this going on, the work's going to continue. And help everybody understand how we're expanding over there and what we're doing, and because we'll probably be doing this until the rapture, is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and again, this is that's a great question because we've always been pro-Israel. You've done a good job of you're doing your job as a pastor and teaching us the whole counsel of God and understanding Israel's role, and God's not done with His people. And for us, this all started off with raising funds for buying vests for a unit that we didn't even know.
Yeah.
And then making one trip over here to deliver supplies, and it's expanded to almost a continual presence. The opportunities we have, and for people that don't know, we are in the process of forming a nonprofit here. They call it an Amutah. So we would operate as an Israeli-based organization. I don't think they would consider us a religious organization, but we're a nonprofit with the same scope that we currently have as the Rock Harbor Ministry. And our focus now is really, from where we're located out. So we're working with the local regional council here. I call him the mayor of Yeshua. I've met him twice. And the first line of defense for us is that local safety team or security team. And they're just individuals that live here in the village. The government issues them a rifle, and that's about it. So we've already talked to them about their equipment needs. They need basic personal protection equipment, vest, helmets. They actually need some training. So there's an opportunity for us to set them up with some consultants that can help train them on their tactics. The reserve units that we work with, currently Unit 66 is not mobilized. I don't know if they're currently going to be mobilized with the change, but the tank battalion we support, they've been mobilized. They're down in Gaza. So the fight down in Gaza is still there. It's probably in the background, but they're, the whole ceasefire and that whole agreement down in Gaza. If you're here, the actual activity and engagement is probably at the same level, or if not higher, before they got all the hostages back, because the terrorists they won't adhere to the boundaries that are set. So there's still, like with the tank battalion, they still have needs. They have needs with some support on expanding the drone capabilities. And then there's just the human side, dealing with the families. Like we're working with Dan Carlson with his organization to give some relief to some soldiers here, so they can kind of decompress from what's going on, and really that's like one of the first steps in dealing with PTSD. So the other thing that's occurring here that's you don't hear a lot about is the government's actually recognizing there's an issue with PTSD. So they're offering really meager resources. I think like 3,000 shekels for soldiers to get, start the counseling process. Good. So we're still working with freedom fighters. They actually have a full-time resource here. So we're trying to find opportunities to really work with soldiers that are suffering from PTSD. Even though we're not really equipped to deal with it, there's resources that are here that can. And then, the other components of the ministry here is really educational. Like we're already doing it. What you do day in and day out on Sundays, Wednesday night, through the podcast, just educating people about Israel, what's going on here. That's part of the scope of the ministry here. Bringing groups over. Yeah, that's a big part of it. God bless, I got Lana and Aaliyah out of here, the small team we had right before the war. But like I tell people, if you come, that first trip is usually like a visionary trip. You'll find something here that resonates with you. Some way you'll find a way to get plugged in and to serve. So it's a little disappointing. I don't want to say we canceled the trips. We've delayed 2 of the 3 trips. We still have one that's on the bubble. We're working with Netiville and Baptist Village. If the airlines open up, maybe we can get that third trip here.
Yeah.
But again, it's a ministry of presence. We still need people to come. So first opportunity when the airlines open back up, we want to get people here
Yeah.
because it's a big encouragement. I mean, we talk about this all the time is in these end times, what's important? Is it important to stockpile a bunch of stuff, or is it important to have relationships with people that have your back and that are going to be in the fight with you? And here, we always talk about, hey, they're going to get in the foxhole with us and they have our back. Here, hey, we're going to jump in the bomb shelter with them,
Yeah.
and we're going to have their backs.
Right. No, that's good. So let me ask you a practical question, then I'll let you get running. How are you hanging in there? I mean, is the stores open? How are you getting food, man? Is what's open? What's closed? How are you hanging in there, man?
Well, I'm kind of like the ignorant American. I drive around even though the alarms are going off.
Okay.
I just
Well, there
figure
you
I'll
go.
drive faster. So the nice thing about where we're staying is there's actually a community notification system. They notify us when the store's open.
Okay.
So it's like, hey, the store's open. Everybody rushes up there.
Okay.
We keep water. I keep like a bunch of dried fruit and nuts and things in the bomb shelter.
Okay.
But I can tell you, the neighbors, we have a great contact here with Amnon and his family.
Okay.
Man, they've been feeding me like no tomorrow. Usually I eat once a day.
Well,
So
You're
I'm,
good-
I'm,
doing
I'm
good
probably
then.
gaining weight, man. So this is, we all have a call to ministry, Brandon, and
Yeah.
this. And this isn't something I envisioned ever doing. I tell people, I go, look, the first step to ministry is just saying yes.
Yeah.
When a deacon or a pastor or you ask somebody to do something, even though it might seem like it's outside of our wheelhouse, we might not recognize that we have the skills or the gifts or the talents to do it. Just say yes,
Yeah.
and let the Lord lead you. It's a hardship. I miss my wife. I miss my dogs. I miss being at church. I miss my friends at church. But also, this is no one ever said ministry was going to be easy.
Right.
And I always tell men that I'm discipling. It's like, hey, if you get involved and you answer the call, I go, the first thing it's going to cost you is your time.
Yeah.
That me time, that I want to be a professional golfer and play on the senior PGA.
Yeah, you heard it.
It's like,
Yeah.
hey, there's no discretional, there's no free time if you're serving the Lord. You know this. I mean, you're the hardest working person I know. So it's all about just being obedient and letting the Lord lead us. And again, I get a little freaked out, but at the same time, when I really just get in the Word and I realize, hey, this is where I'm supposed to be, and I couldn't do it without the support of Lana.
Sure.
She's been a big supporter, and we couldn't do this without the support of the church.
Sure.
I mean, we've been here the whole time, and it's a tremendous opportunity, but it also comes. It's not a cheap ministry, right?
Right.
It represents a large percentage of the overall budget for the church, so
It
we
sure
can't do it
does.
without people's support.
Yeah.
And it's that fine line of, hey, we gotta pay the bills at the church and keep the church open on Sundays, and also support a pretty large ministry here in Israel. So it's
Yeah.
through the people watching right now, people that attend on Sunday, and their support and continued support that enables us to have this ministry.
That's right.
And on our end, we're doing everything we can to reduce costs. I told you we're trying to reduce our our OPEX over here by about 30 to 40%, which will enable us to do more with the soldiers, do more with in the community, and help kind of supplement getting some people over here.
Yeah.
I mean, we're working on our June youth and young adult trip. They've done a tremendous job of fundraising on their own. We've had church members, step up and say, if there's any young adults or youth that need help, let us know. And it's like,
Yeah.
hey, they're doing a great job right now, raising their own funds.
Yeah.
So it's like I say, we can't do it without support from the church. And again, like I always tell people, you've done a great job of leading the church and being faithful as a pastor. You're the one that gets the vision and direction of the church. And as being plugged into ministry, everything we do should support and enable the direction that you're leading the church. So I would encourage people, pray for us here, pray for the people, pray for our military. It really resonates with Lana and myself right now that the U.S. is involved because Thor's active in the U.S. military. So we hope it's a swift and decisive victory, and they don't start tapping resources, other resources. But pray for our troops. Pray that Trump continues to make better decisions, and pray for the people here. They need it.
Amen. Amen. Well, we're definitely praying for them and the United States and you as well, so be safe over there. We appreciate the sacrifice you're making, and I know it's hard. You're by yourself over there, and thank God you got a community around you, but we're with you in spirit. We appreciate that, and Keith, stay safe, and we'll keep checking back with you. Maybe next week. We'll see how you're doing, and be safe until then, my friend.
All right, man. Hey,
All right.
Good night, everybody, or good morning, whatever time it is. I'm confused. God bless everybody.
God bless you. All right. Great to hear from him and hear what's going down. And then I'll have Alfonso switch us over here. But yeah, I was talking to Keith last night, pretty late. And he's like, you just can't believe how these people live. They'll be out there walking their dog, and then they hear the bomb siren, and then go and they're getting the bombs, the shelter and stuff like that. And it's like an everyday thing. And I'm like, man, that would wear me down, man, because you're trying to live life, you're trying to sleep in the middle of the night, and then you hear the siren going on, or that F-16 coming down and intercepting a drone. It's just like, I can't conceptualize that. And I told Keith last night, I said, you know what I think it would be like? It'd be like living in San Diego and across the border, let's pretend, Tijuana is Hezbollah firing rockets into San Diego. I mean, that's how close they live to like Hezbollah. And it's like, I couldn't conceive of that. It's crazy when you go there, how small the area is and stuff like that. But yeah, pray for them, please. Pray for the people. Pray for Israel, our military, and everything like that. And then let's pray about what's going on here, because with the remaining time I want to show you, we got a major problem going on in the United States, and it's with the propaganda that's going on. And let me get my little buzzer thing working here. Am I changing? Well, it's not changing. Can you play that little thing in there, Alfonso? Or am I frozen? It moved, but it's moving on that thing, but it's not moving on the... There, it needed to do that, I think. No, it's moving on the thing, but it's not moving on here. Is that it? Oh, there we go. So whatever you did, you did. All right, thank you, Alfonso. God bless you. So the first thing we're dealing with, we have a war we're hammering Iran, and rightfully so. And the problem that we're having is we have the political left, and then we have the woke right that is leading people astray on all of this, and it's getting a lot of Christians confused. And so there's two wars going on. There's a war in the Middle East, and then there's a propaganda war. Okay, and I got this clip just to lighten the mood. I thought this was funny. We've been through 7 presidents until Trump finally dealing with Iran. And remember what Kamala and Joe Biden said, and then you know what Trump said. Here we go.
What's the message to Iran?
Don't. What is your message to Iran in this moment?
Don't.
I'm going to bomb out of them. I don't care.
That's the difference. Just wanted to play that to lighten the mood. Classic Trump, God bless him on that one, man. But anyway, one of the interesting things I want to do as a talking point is this Iran attack, which is a lot of the weird. This is the weird stuff floating on X and Instagram. This attack was not influenced by Christian Zionists and dispensationalists like us, because Candace Owens has said that people like me are being paid by the Israeli government to be pro-Israel. Just wanted to let you know that. And all the pro-Israel pastors are being paid by the Israeli government to push this Zionist narrative. By the way, there was no Zionist or Christian Zionist or dispensationalist around Trump to tell him to do this. Just want to make that point because if you thought, because the idea out there on X is we're the ones that want to hasten the end, the end times, and we're trying to bring it to fruition by, trying to influence Trump and create Gog of Magog. And it's like, well, this actually kicked the can down the road. So it's not us influencing that. Pete Hegseth is Presbyterian. He's Reformed. He has no dispensational. So, but this is what's being blamed. It's these Christian Zionists, dispensationalists that are pushing the narrative. Just wanted to state that. Anyway, we went after their 88 experts or whatever. We don't know if we got them all, but we bombed them as well along with the other guys. Now, here's the thing. Here's where the propaganda starts going. So Dracula himself, Newsom himself starts spewing out propaganda this week, okay? So here's what you got to do. You got to listen to your opponent. You got to listen to your enemy to see what your enemy is saying so you can counteract it with truth. So listen to this montage because you've got to be able to come back at this with truth, okay?
And now we have Gulf allies that are being attacked. We have American planes that are literally being shot down by American allies. We have to reconcile why our bombs were used or Israeli bombs were used to kill children, young girls at a school. He lied to you. So reckless is the only way to describe this. Destruction is not strength. And once again, we've seen him destroy not only our allies in relationship to the rest of the world, but we're seeing him destroy any capacity to explain fundamentally what the core American interest is at this moment, to declare war, to go to war with a regime. He didn't describe to the American people what the end game is here. He didn't describe the existential threat of the moment, the immediacy of the crisis at hand. There wasn't one. He manufactured it. That's Donald Trump, the chaos president, this wrecking ball president across the board.
Wow. We didn't tell anybody what we were doing. Okay. Keep listening. Keep listening. He's going to call Israel apartheid state, so just keep listening. This is the guy running for president, okay?
You mentioned the shifting explanations and rationales that are coming out of the White House. Yesterday, Marco Rubio pretty explicitly said that the timing of the operation was based on planning by Israel. He basically said, we knew that the Israelis were going to strike Iran, which meant Iran would strike back against our bases in the region, which means the U.S. had to preempt the response, I guess, and bomb the Iranians first. What did you make of that explanation? And then a lot of Democrats have looked at the Netanyahu regime and felt like, you know what, we don't like the trajectory he's on. It's time to rethink the U.S. relationship with Israel, especially military support.
Well,
where do you
he's
stand?
making that easy right now. Let's talk about that. So the first rationale was we've got to make sure that they're not nuclear armed. But we, of course, that rationale I thought was resolved, meaning we had completely obliterated their sites. And so that was the first rationale. Then, okay, so, well, maybe that wasn't the case, but now it's about their missiles, and they can perhaps hit the United States. And then you realize, wait, that's a decade plus away, if that. So that's BS. Okay, then it's about their militias. It's about their proxy. Then it's about their Navy. And then it's in response to the likelihood that Israel was going to, so we had to go in ourselves. And then you hear Hegseth, God help us, and his rationale or non-rationale. So this is Keystone Cops, but playing with real lives, with our reputation. They've already, so you see what's happened to our allies, you see what's happened in the NATO alliance in the context of truth and trust and the conversations that all of our allies are having now with India and with China as they're strengthening those relationships because they're starting to decouple or de-risk their relationship with the United States. But the issue of Bibi's interesting because he's got his own domestic issues. He's trying to stay out of jail. He's got an election coming up. He's potentially on the ropes. He's got folks, the hard line, that want to annex the West Bank. I mean, Freeman and others are talking about it appropriately, sort of an apartheid state. They couldn't even, I mean, we're talking about regime change. For 2 years, they haven't even been able to solve the Hamas question in Israel. So this is, I mean, you know, I want to be careful here, but, you know, in so many ways, that influence in the context of the conversation of where Trump ultimately landed on this is pretty damn self-evident. And so Rubio may have been saying something else in the context of what he ultimately said in terms of being sort of pulled into some of these things. But I will say this, didn't surprise me in this context. I don't know if it was Napoleon or whoever said about a sword, the only thing you can't use a sword for is sitting on it. And when you bring 2 aircraft carriers out there and you assemble the kind of military force that Trump did over the last few weeks, it didn't surprise me ultimately they moved that direction.
Do you think, looking down the road, that the United States should consider maybe, you know, rethinking our military support for Israel?
It breaks my heart because the current leadership in Israel is walking us down that path where I don't think you have a choice but that consideration. I mean, to say this is in America's interest at a time when affordability is at crisis levels, where you had an administration who literally got elected saying this is exactly opposite of what they would ever consider doing. The fact that we are in this now regional war, all these proxies, the fact that we, you know, and all the grift and the corruption that's also marks a huge part of this, and that's a real conversation we need to have, this board of peace. And the peace that the Witkoff family's getting, and the peace that Kushner is getting, and the peace that Trump Jr. is getting. You just got to reconsider the whole thing. You just have to. And, you know, that's a stubborn I didn't expect to be in that place.
Yeah.
You know, a few years ago, let alone, you know, where we are today.
Wow. I counted 36 lies. I don't know what your count was. But it's just on and on. Okay, the Netanyahu regime is apartheid. They're pulling us in. This was Trump's flying by the seat of his pants. Yada yada yada. You hear all the talking about. It's all lies. Okay. The problem is we have it on the left, and I'm going to show you how to refute all of this. Okay, because that's not true. What he just said, the 36 lies he said. But the problem we're having is on the woke right, which most Christians don't listen to Gavin Newsom. They know he's a complete idiot and a liar. The problem is they're listening to the other liars on the right. The Tucker Carlsons, the Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Candace Owens, Thomas Massey, Sean Ryan, Owen Schroer, Steve Bannon, Anna Kasparian, Ian Carroll, Dave Smith, Andrew Tate, Megyn Kelly, Myron Gaines, Hodge Twins, Jake Shields, Nick Fuentes. That's who our side is listening to. And they're making the same argument as the left. Israel's pulling us into a war. We don't know why we're doing this. There wasn't a problem. Trump's flying by the seat of his pants. Okay. The isolationists of the right wing, and that's where I want to focus in, because I'm not so much worried about Gavin Newsom because people can spot him a mile away. They're not spotting Tucker Carlson. They're not spotting Megyn Kelly. So here's the thing. This is what Tucker said. This happened because Israel wanted it to happen. Really? Really? Because my information is totally different, and I did my own research, and I found totally different information than what Tucker found. But I'm not paid by Qatar either, by the way. This is Israel's war. No, it's not. It never has been. This is not the United States war, said Tucker. Carlson said the war was based on lies and led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's manipulations, and argued that the campaign was not in the interest of Israel or the U.S. The United States didn't make the decision here. Benjamin Netanyahu did, Carlson said, dismissing concerns about Iranian weapons development. The point is regional hegemony. Really simple, Tucker said. Israel wants to control the Middle East. What? No. It's us who wants to control the Middle East, not Israel. We want to control it because that's what gives us peace and security in the world, dude. Tucker also blamed Israel for getting the U.S. to kill Muammar Gaddafi in Libya in 2011 and had previously said that Israel made the U.S. invade Iraq. I'm sorry, that's rewriting history. That's not what happened. He claimed Israel was seeking to, quote-unquote, sow chaos and disorder. Well, that's what Iran was supposed to do, I thought, in the Gulf states in its pursuit of regional power, adding that the authorities in Qatar and Saudi Arabia arrested Mossad agents in their territory this week and claimed that, a claim that appeared to be baseless and rejected by Qatar. And that's true. When Qatar fact checks you and you're wrong, you're out to lunch because they didn't arrest any Mossad agents, Tucker. You're lying. He suggested that Israel attacked oil facilities in Saudi Arabia and that Israel was seeking to eject the U.S. from the Middle East, claims that also appear to be baseless. I don't know what he's saying. The problem is the interview had more than 1 million views on YouTube, and that's the problem. That's the problem. He's spewing out a bunch of lies. So is Megyn Kelly. So are all these people, and people are watching them and believing them. That's the problem. And Christians are, and getting messed up. Listen to Megyn Kelly.
First and foremost, I, Megyn Kelly, am praying for the troops. I mean, that's where my mind immediately went. The guys and the gals who have to actually carry out this mission. Why again? And put their lives on the line. For whom again? Are the ones who are on my mind. And I prayed for them mightily yesterday and the day before. And I hope you have and will continue to as well. Look, there are massive divisions over what we've done here. And people are going to change their minds over the coming days and weeks, one way or the other. But my own feeling is no one should have to die for a foreign country. I don't think those 4 service members died for the United States. I think they died for Iran or for Israel. I think I understand how this helps Iran perfectly well. I get it. I mean, I hope.
No, you don't.
Long term, we'll see. But they seem rather jubilant. 80% of the country does not support the Ayatollah. He was a terrible, terrible man. No one's crying that he's dead. No normal person. But our government's job is not to look out for Iran or for Israel. It's to look out for us. And this feels very much, to me, like it is clearly Israel's war. Mark Levin wanted it. It's his war.
Oh, we're going
Ben
Semitic.
Shapiro, Lindsey Graham,
We're going Semitic
Miriam
now.
Adelson. That's obvious. They're the ones who've been pushing us into this. But in case you had any doubt whatsoever, the Washington Post is reporting it explicitly this morning.
The Washington Post? Who trusts that?
About why we did what we did and when we did it. In the briefing on Tuesday for the Gang of Eight, which consists of the leaders of the House, the Senate, and each chamber's intel committees, Secretary of State Marco Rubio indicated to lawmakers that the mission's timing and goals were shaped by the fact that Israel was going to attack with or without the United States, according to a person familiar with the outreach to lawmakers.
Yeah,
so the only debate that seemed to be remaining was whether the U.S. would launch in concert with Israel or if the U.S. would wait until Iran retaliated on U.S. military targets in the region and then engage. That sounds perfectly right. I mean, I think you knew that before you heard me read it from the Washington Post. So Israel said they were going to do it. Tucker Carlson said this on the show on Thursday. He said exactly that.
Yeah, and you're just like Tucker. It will be a cold day in hell if I ever quote from the Washington Post. They're a communist rag. That's controlled by, what's his face, the guy who owns Amazon. What's his name? Bezos. No one trusts the Washington Post, like no one trusts the New York Times. She's quoting from the Washington Post. What side are you on? And you're blaming Mark Levin for bringing us into this war? He's a podcaster. What are you talking about? Has she flipped her wig? I think so. Just remember what kind of person Megyn Kelly is. Watch this.
People with me on stage right now are all transgender kids who want others to know it is possible to transition socially with love and support and acceptance within a family and a community. Please welcome 16-year-old Nicole, 12-year-old Daniel, 14-year-old Gia, 15-year-old Landon, and 13-year-old Stella. Their parents are also here. Morning, everyone. Morning. Also Also joining me in our special audience is Gira Goldstein, who's a transgender woman who is the co-founder, along with Jen Grosslandler, who you just met, of the Gender Cool Project, a new movement that is being launched today. We're going to tell you all about it, and it's actually really important. So, all right, welcome to you all. Everybody nervous? Everyone sufficiently nervous? Okay.
Just don't forget that. What does that tell you about someone like Megyn Kelly, who's a pseudo-conservative? She's a grifter. That's all she is. She goes to the highest paid person. Whether she's working for Megyn Kelly today, CNN, Fox, whatever, she turns into a chameleon to be whatever she needs to be. I hope you have figured this out. She is not credible anymore. Neither is Tucker. The U.S. stated objectives were very clear to everybody. Destroy Iran's missile capabilities, annihilate their navy, ensure Iran can never obtain nuclear weapon, ensure Iranian regime can't continue to arm and fund global terrorism. That has all American interest. Trump denies Israel forced him to take him into Iran strikes. I would agree. Who in the world do you know could tell Trump what to do? I mean, come on. Do you really not know him? Okay, first. This is the AP, okay? This is not a conservative news group. The United States made its own strategic decision, according to the AP, Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson. Even critics acknowledged that U.S. leadership had stated the strikes were ordered to protect American interests and prevent Iranian threats, not because Israel forced the decision. I'll show you just in the timeline more details. Just hang on. Trump rejected the notion that White House had been dragged into a conflict by Israel. We were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack, Trump said. If anything, I might have forced Israel's hand. Rubio on Tuesday echoed Trump's insistence that the decision to attack Iran was made independent of Israel. Here he is.
If we don't stop them, or if we didn't stop them, or if we didn't start, they've been decimated. But if we didn't do what we're doing right now, you would have had a nuclear war, and they would have taken out many countries, because you know what? They're sick people. They're mentally ill, sick people. They're angry. They're crazy. They're sick. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. They were going to attack. If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first. I felt strongly about that. Based on the way the negotiation was going, I think they were going to attack first, and I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand, but Israel was ready, and we were ready, and we've had a very, very powerful impact, because virtually everything they have has been knocked out now.
There's out of the horse's mouth. If anything, we pulled Israel into it. Let's look at what happened before this, okay? So this is what Megyn Kelly's not telling. This is not what Tucker Carlson's telling, or Gavin Newsom, the left, what you expect. Let's go back and do some history. This was building for years, guys, this attack. This wasn't flying by the seat of our pants or anything like that. In April of 2024, the United States shifted Israel from EUCOM, which is primarily focused on Russia and Europe, to CENTCOM. This move facilitated shared threat assessments, joint operational planning, and pooling of intelligence and sensor resources, and most importantly, the personal trust between commanders that is essential during wartime. So this is 2024. We moved Israel to CENTCOM. We needed more coordination with them in dealing with Iran, okay? Here's the border strategy context. We killed, under Trump administration, General Soleimani in 2020, and showed that the administration did not want escalation. The second thing happened is the Abrahamic Accords happened, okay? I'm not a fan of the Abrahamic Accords, and neither are you, because it slices and dices Israel's land. But the issue of Israel moving to CENTCOM happened in the Abraham Accords. It established basically the framework for the United States to help defend Israel, not us being pulled into a war, but help us defend Israel against potential Iranian attack. This change also allowed for involvement of Israel's neighboring countries in these defense activities. So part of the Abrahamic Accords, even though I disagree with them, included protecting Israel, protecting Saudi Arabia, protecting the UAE, and everybody that wanted to join in the Accords, we would give them protection. That's what it would involve. But we're going to now share intelligence on what's going on in the Middle East about Iran. They were the problem. So here's what happened. So top Israeli military commanders have publicly lauded the partnership that the Abrahamic Accords caused. IDF Chief Staff Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, speaking on June 22nd from the IDF Command Center, called the U.S. strike a turning point in the campaign and emphasized that the coordination with the United States is a major strategic asset for Israel. Okay, watch this. The sentiment was echoed by an Israeli military officer who, speaking at the start of the Israeli campaign against Iran, just back in the summer, said the U.S. military has been a leading partner since day one of this war. Not a follower, the leader in this. So, he goes, this is not an overstatement. So when they say Israel pulled us into a war, CENTCOM is saying, no, we did this so we could have control of the Middle East, and we're leading it out. Not Israel, the United States. Months of planning behind U.S. mission to target just the Ayatollah. Months. Okay? Here's what I compiled on my own research using liberal news organizations. Okay? And I did this for a reason. To show you that even the liberal news organizations disagrees with Tucker and Megyn Kelly and the rest of the woke right. I did this on purpose. Here's the timeline. The Tehran strike was being planned for years. The CIA and the Mossad had hacked into the traffic camera systems in Iran. That's how they knew where the Ayatollah was, and all of these guys they took out. They had hacked into the camera systems on the streets. That's how they do it. This was a long time ago. The officials in command adjusted their operations after intelligence confirmed that Khomeini and other senior officials would meet at his compound in Tehran on Saturday morning. This was part of a years-long intelligence campaign that showed how they could assassinate the Ayatollah. So this has always been in the works to take this guy out. 3, the U.S. and Iran were engaged in negotiations over Tehran's nuclear program. We all know that. We were trying to make a deal with them. Trump's decision to strike last week followed lengthy negotiations by the president's envoy, Steve Witkoff's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, with the Iranians. They tried to do it. That's you know that. 4, so after negotiations, or during the negotiations, Netanyahu met with President Donald Trump at the White House on February 11th. The talk was not about ongoing Iran negotiations. Instead, it was about what happened when those talks fail. Netanyahu presented Trump with fresh intelligence about Iran's military capabilities. The meeting followed a series of high-level military and intelligence discussions between the U.S. and Israel as plans for a joint U.S.-Israel attack came into focus. 5th, U.S. intelligence and Israeli intelligence played a critical role in enabling Israel's decisions and ability to strike Iran by providing high-fidelity intelligence on the location and movements of Iran's top leadership, including Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. According to reports, the CIA identified with high confidence that the senior Iranian leaders would be gathered at specific sites in Tehran for a coordinated meeting, creating strategic window for a decisive strike. Not the Mossad, the CIA. That's where the intelligence was coming from. This intelligence was shared directly with Israel from the CIA, allowing both nations to synchronize their operations. Operation Epic Fury, Operation Roaring Lion, to target command and control centers, missile facilities, regime leadership simultaneously. The U.S. also conducted cyber and space-based operations to degrade Iranian air defenses, ensuring Israeli aircraft could operate with local air superiority. It's a totally different story than what I'm hearing from Tucker, and I got this from CNN, India.com, and AP. These are not conservative things. This is what they said. This is the Hindustan Times. The U.S. Central Intelligence is reportedly in talks with the Kurdish armed groups in Iran and Iraq with intention of arming them to take power in Iran through an uprising. So the CIA, The Americans are arming the Kurdish, not Israel. We are. We're involved. Senior Iranian Kurdish officials said to CNN that the Kurdish armed forces may launch an on-ground operation against clerical regime soon. The official described the current power vacuum at the death of Ayatollah Khamenei as a big opportunity. So we're funding, we're supplying the Kurdish to go do this. It's not Israel, it's us. Okay. So, like we said, what's the reasons? Okay, so our intelligence has been watching it. Well, first, it is protecting American interests to prevent Iranian threats, and it wasn't Israel that forced us the decision. First of all, they are the leading state sponsor of terrorism around the world. And like we said last week, we have sleeper cells in the United States because of Iran. They have been funding Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and they have described wanting to destroy us as the great Satan and then Israel as the little Satan. They have spent decades and decades attacking and killing Americans constantly. Let me show you, Megyn Kelly and Tucker and the rest of you anti-Semites out there, how many Americans have been killed since 1979 from the Iranian regime, and you don't want to have a problem with this. November 1979, April 1983, October 1980, March 1984, September 1984. I'm not even going to read it. These are all the attacks where they killed and kidnapped people from America. December 1984, June 1985, July 1989, April 1995, August 1995, February 1996, March 1996, June, September, keep going, August 2001, January 2002, July 2002, June 2003, between 2003 and 2011, Iran-backed militias killed at least 603 troops. August 2003, August 2006, January 2007, March 2000, July 2014, October 2015, December 2019, January 20, September 20, February 2021, July, September, November, March 2023, December 23, January 2024. Between October 23 and November 24, Iran and its proxies conducted more than 180 attacks against U.S. forces in the Middle East, wounding more than 180 U.S. servicemen and killing 3 service members. If that ain't enough to go after a regime, I don't know what is. Okay? This is what Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson don't want to talk about. They have been killing Americans since 1979. When was it going to end? Because up until 2024, they were still doing it. This is despite them enriching uranium. This is despite them funding Hezbollah and all the Houthis around Israel and trying to attack Israel. It is our war. They've been going after us. November 2024. All the way June 2025, Iran-backed militias attacked 3 U.S. bases in Syria and 2 bases in Iraq. Need I say more? Israel didn't drag America into this war. That's the wrong claim, and that has no agency, by the way. The argument treats America as if it's controlled by another country and we're acting on Israel's interests. We are not. We're making our own decisions. Some U.S. leaders who even support the strikes argued that they were necessary for American defense. For example, U.S. leadership has said preventing Iran's regime from threatening American interests and allies is a legitimate objective of operation. It is. It is. Because when you have intercontinental ballistic missiles or you're going nuclear and you have enough uranium enriched for 11 nuclear weapons, you can't have these lunatics with that kind of weaponry. Because they go over they can fly, they can hit us, they can hit Europe, they can hit any of our allies, not just Israel. And then what do we have with? Let's add more that Tucker's not asking, and neither is Megyn Kelly, and neither of any of the woke right. We have a major problem with China. And they are connected to Iran, as you know. So Trump is being very strategic in the sense that he went and took Venezuela and got that idiot out of there. And now he's hit Iran. Guess where China gets their oil? from both Venezuela and Iran. Thank you very much. So it's beyond the Middle East. It is geopolitical. He is trying to hit China on its knees for what they're doing. He is not letting them rule this world. So China has an energy security problem. It's the largest buyer of Iranian oil, often purchasing despite sanctions. Okay? If the war disrupts Iranian exports or shipping through the Straits of Hormuz, China's energy supply becomes vulnerable. It's true. Strategic partnership with Iran and China has a long-term economic security partnership with Tehran and sees Iran as part of the broader geopolitical network that counters U.S. influence. So it's bigger than just Iran. It is global. We're dealing with China. And we're dealing with Russia. The issue with Russia, it's very complicated. But here's the problem. As you know, Russia is linked to Iran. They're a key partner with them, okay? Iran supplies drones and military technology to Russia. And they've been using that in the Ukraine war, no doubt about that. But Russia's in a weakened state. They can't intervene right now. And so, believe it or not, attacking Iran is actually helping Russia in its oil issues. Because the conflict benefits them too as they export oil. So Russia is saying we don't agree with this, but they're not going to get involved. They don't have the military ability, and they're benefiting from this anyway. Let's talk about the EU. Let's talk about Turkey. Do you understand? Let us talk about Europe and how fouled up Europe is right now. They don't even know what side to be on. They're so stupid. They're just stupid. Okay? So check this out. All the Muslim countries like Bahrain, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan are like all for this, except the Muslim countries of Great Britain, France, and Spain. Does that sound odd to you? Spain, Trump said, we're going to cut you off because they won't let us use some of their bases to land on. Neither will Great Britain, neither will France. Macron's decrying it. Okay. I know what side you're on now. But anyway, let's talk about Turkey because Turkey's a major player. They don't like those Kurds there. Turkey's been using Syria with al-Jilani to take out Christians, to take out the Alawites, to take out the Kurds because they can't stand the Kurds, and to take out the Druze. They want to eliminate them, and so that's going on right now. So Turkey's been using Jilani to do this. Here's their boy, which I can't believe we brought Jilani to the White House. I can't believe that. I just don't understand this. Turkey, as you know, wants regional hegemony. They want to establish the Ottoman Empire again. That's what this megalomaniac also, he's crazy too. He wants to establish the Ottoman Empire again. So he wants the Kurds out of there, and he has no problem with Iran losing their power. He sees this as an opening and a vacuum to fill in the vacuum. The only problem he's worried about is it destabilizes his border, and he's going to have mass influx of people leaving the area and coming into Turkey. That's what he's worried about. He doesn't want to deal with the Kurdish militant groups. And remember, we are arming the Kurds right now. The CIA is arming the Kurds to fight. Okay, so he doesn't like that. And so they're watching this, but they're looking for a power move. They're looking for a power grab. Okay. So at the end of the day, what you start having is Trump is playing chess with these guys, and it's not just about Iran. He's going after the anti-Western bloc, the Iran, China, Russia, North Korea bloc. These are all working together, okay? And what these countries do together is they do weapons development, sanctions evasions, military technology, and energy trade, trying to go around the dollar. And so this is more strategic than most people think. Iran believe it or not, has signed a Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS as well, expansion discussions, which are attempts to build a financial and geopolitical alternative to the Western order, to get around the dollar. That's what they've been doing, okay? Well, we're the number one currency, and Trump is not wanting this. So this is bigger. So by striking Iran's military infrastructure, the U.S. weakens a key partner inside the emerging anti-Western network. So this is geopolitics. This is what's been going on. Okay. So with that in mind then, here is the multiple strategic interests tied to Iran that go beyond Israel's security concerns. It's not just about Israel. It's way bigger than that. Again, yes, we want to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. You can't have that. But we want to weaken Iran's terror proxy network, no doubt about it. But we want to disrupt China's discounted oil supply. That's huge. We want to limit Russia and their military cooperation. We want to maintain stability in global energy markets because we want to control that. We want to protect allies like Israel and the Gulf states. That's true. But it includes more than Israel. We want to maintain control of the Middle East. Okay. Here's my thing. Why wouldn't we want to control the Middle East? I don't want the Middle East controlled by Islam. And that's what Trump is trying to do without putting boots on the ground. That's what he's doing. And we can do it through our proxy, Israel. That's what he's figured out. And that's what Israel even acknowledges. Use us as a proxy in the Middle East and we'll control it for you. Supply us the weapons and we will keep everything under control. So it's like Yoram Ettinger said to one time when I was interviewing him in Israel. He was a former ambassador to the United States. He said, Israel is a permanent aircraft carrier in the Middle East for the United States, to which to control that whole region. I get it. Now here's my thing. Let's take a step back. That's the strategic intent. I get that. What are the biblical mandates behind it? Because here's what you're going to say. You're going to hear these crazy progressive Christians say we don't have a right to do what we're doing in the Middle East. And here's the thing. Apparently they don't understand just war, because the Bible supports a just war. Romans 13, the authority of the government to use force is right there in Romans 13 and 1 Peter chapter 2. The government can use force. That's why they bear the sword. Okay. The other issue in Scripture for a just war is defense of the innocent and the weak. Psalm 82, defend the poor and the fatherless, do justice to the afflicted and the needy. When Tucker and them want to be isolationists, that goes against defending the innocent and the weak. Proverbs 24, deliver those who are drawn toward death and hold back those stumbling to slaughter. But the Iranian people getting slaughtered? Yeah. That's not the only reason we did it. I showed you all the other reasons. But part of defending the weak is what we're supposed to do. Isaiah 17, seek justice, rebuke the oppressor, defend the fatherless, and plead for the widow. Those are the most defenseless people. Legitimate self-defense. Yes, a thief breaks in your house and you strike him and he dies, no blood guilt. Now in California, you might get in trouble. But according to Exodus, you're fine. Nehemiah 14:4, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, great and awesome, and fight for your brethren, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. Yeah. Luke, he who has no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. Sanctioning wars against evil nations. Is there a precedent for that? Of course. That's what Israel was supposed to do as a nation. They were going against evil nations and destroying them. We have every precedent for. Was Iran evil? Absolutely. Rescue and defensive warfare. Yes. Abraham armed 318 men and went and rescued Lot from invading kings. Esther, the king permitted the Jews. Remember, the edict came out to kill every Jew. Remember that? So after Esther did her saving of the nation, the thing goes out, and what does it say? That the king permitted the Jews to destroy, kill, and annihilate all forces of any people or province that would assault them. Moral purpose of war: restraining evil, not conquest. We're not trying to conquest Iran. We're not trying to take over. We're not trying to nation build. We're just restraining evil. That's what we're doing. And let me tell you, I'm going to finish on this. I got this picture today from Olivier Melnick. You know, he's a good friend of our church and a friend of our ministry. We've had Olivier. And his whole thing is he's trying to fight the anti-Semitism out there. And he said, Brandon, in my new article that I'm putting out, I'm going to add a new definition to anti-Semitism. And I said, really? So he was talking to me yesterday about it. He goes, I go, explain what you're talking about. He goes, what's happening right now with the Tucker Carlsons, the Megyn Kellys, left, Gavin Newsom's, what's really happening is there's no doubt it's anti-Semitism. There's no doubt. But what's going to happen is the anti-Semitism is going to get put on anybody, Gentiles included, that support Israel. So the patch is not just simply going to be for the Jew, it's going to be for the Christian Zionist who supports Israel. And that's who they're going to go after. That's who they're going to lambast. You wear an Israeli shirt, you put an Israeli flag in front of your house, and let's see what you get from people. Because right now, we're getting people that they support Israel shirt or anything that looks like that, and they're getting cussed out at the grocery store, at the stores, by people, because people have believed these lies. And so we're going to be lumped into this. And that's what you should expect. But my thing is what I tried to show you tonight, and what you have to go out to do is you have to dispel these lies. You have to tell people that's not true. We weren't flying by the seat of their pants. We were planning on killing Ayatollah for a year over. We were planning this with CENTCOM for years to attack them, and finally came to fruition. And it's the CIA who told us when to do it, not the Mossad, even though we were working with them. Anyway, that's our job. That's what we have to fight, okay? So let's get this down, and let's be a warrior in the propaganda war, okay? Let's pray. Father, thank you, Lord, for what we can learn tonight. Thank you for hearing from Keith, and I just pray you continue to protect him, protect the Israeli people, protect our military, and help us to take care of this evil that's in our world, Father. And help us also fight this propaganda war with truth about what's really going on, because we see anti-Semitism everywhere, Father. And help us to do our job to protect your word, protect your truth about the Jewish people. Bless us now as we go. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you guys. Ron, what do we got to do? Break out the tables and bring in the rounds. Thank you, guys.